and good day. Welcome to the Galen Eagle podcast. For today's podcast, we are talking to Mr. Ishmael Quiroz. He is the Executive Director for the Economic Development Council, and we'll be talking about private-public collaboration, private-public dialogue, and the benefits and ways in which entrepreneurs and the entrepreneurial spirit can take advantage of that collaboration between public and private sector. Mr. Quiroz, would you quickly do an introduction for us here?
Thank you so much, Katherine. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm actually a Galen Eagle, and so I'm even all the more privileged. So with that, officially, I'm the Director of Public-Private Dialogue in the Office of the Prime Minister. And in that role, I do serve as the Economic Development Council's Executive Director. The Economic Development Council, or EDC, is the government's official mechanism for dialogue and communication between the government and the business community. And so I think it's quite fitting that we're speaking about enhancing, improving, supporting a robust and a good entrepreneurial ecosystem and business climate. So I'm very happy to be diving into it.
Absolutely. And, entrepreneurship is something, we hear very often, collaboration, dialogue, also, incubator systems. All these things are important part, as you said, of that economic development ecosystem. And we know how important entrepreneurship is to the development of any nation, how important it is into the short term, the middle term, and into the long term. And I think it's important for us to talk a little bit about, so if you don't mind here, I just want to read very quickly because I want to cover everything, the objectives of the Economic Development Council, because they're critical and important and a very, very important part of that ecosystem. We know that the successes within economic development, within our economy across the board, connects between public sector policy and private sector action that directly interconnects and creates that entrepreneurial environment, so to say. So let me just quickly go over the objective for EDC, as it's commonly known. It is to strengthen the collaboration between public and private sectors through meaningful dialogue that leads to positive outcomes, facilitating economic development. And I think that really sums it up, right? And I will tell you, this is an important, essential committee or council, excuse me, and its effects and its positive effects to our economy, I can attest, is there. I've benefited from this connection as well. So I think it's important that we line that up. And I would love to start there because sometimes we think about the fact that, public-private sector partnerships, public-private sector collaborations or dialogues are not so easily translatable in practice. Lovely on paper, but not maybe as easily in terms of actioning. And I think, your council, Ishmael, has done a great job at and has achieved quite a number of different actions. So I want to start there so we can, so that our audience can learn a little bit about where your successes are. And then we can get into the discussion about where you intend to go into the shorter term, what's your low-hanging fruit, what are your focus areas, and then into the longer term as well. So would you like to give us some feedback on your successes from your desk?
Thank you, Katherine. I really liked that you pointed out that, government's role is to set the stage in terms of policy and having a legislative framework, as well as having the environment. And private sector's responsibility is to drive legitimate business and to stir and stimulate economic activity by creating jobs. And so that's where it all comes together. On the one hand, government needs to be providing services and a vision and an overarching framework. And private sector, the business community, is government's partner. And that's, I think, where it begins in terms of the chronology of success of the EDC. We came from a point where government and private sector could not see eye to eye on various issues. There were lots of bottlenecks, there were lots of problems, bureaucratic procedures, and of course corruption in the government system. And that was, at the inception of the EDC, private sector's gripe, so to speak. And so what was decided was to really bring the perspectives together. And the way that I like to describe it is that we, as a council, table the private sector's complaints and challenges, as well as their pointing out opportunities, and the public sector coming in and articulating government's realities and limitations in the context of the laws that need to be updated, in the context of the processes that need to be simplified, and finding workable solutions. And that's what we mean by meaningful dialogue. Finding workable solutions that result in simpler processes, shorter time to get a permit, for example. And so that's where I think it becomes real in terms of the entrepreneurial support that the work of the EDC provides. It's all about making it simpler to do business, more affordable, cutting time, and making the processes more predictable and transparent. And so thereby addressing the issue of corruption.
Right. And all, what you just said is prime and necessary for the nurturing of entrepreneurship as well. Right. Mm-hmm. So that's a critical component. I know one of the topics that we've been talking about, and this is going back a couple of years now, is that ease of doing business, and it all interconnects. Are there any particular, achievements that you are incredibly proud of from your desk that we can talk about?
Absolutely. On the matter of ease of doing business, you should know that the work of the Economic Development Council is guided by pretty much the World Bank's doing business indicators. And whereas we know that 2 years ago, it was decided to discontinue the format, the then format of reporting of the doing business indicators, the indicators in and of themselves are still very important, because we should be aiming to simplify the steps, the time, the transaction cost. And so we're still very much guided by what those indicators represent. One of them, and the primary one, being starting a business. And so where does a business's life begin? It's at the company's registry. It's registering your business name, and then you go the next step and you register, or you incorporate. But at the point of registering your business name, it's important for entrepreneurs to understand why that's so important. You register a business name so that you can secure your rights to use that name. You can then access different services, like, for example, opening a bank account. But together with that comes other processes and services that you go to government for. For example, registering for your tax identification number, or your TIN number, registering or applying for a trade license if you operate within a municipality at this point in time. And so there are different services that are connected to registering your business name. And we've been very pleased that a project that we implemented over the course of a couple of years has now established the framework upon which the Belize Companies and Corporate Affairs Registry is going fully digital. And so it's a timely discussion, because on November 28th, the company's registry will launch its online business companies registry system, which for the very first time will deliver a Belizean public service fully digitally. And so it's a significant achievement, and it all began with a very small project that did a diagnostic of what the digitization needs of the registry were. And then, of course, we had to update laws. We had to streamline processes, what we refer to as business process reengineering. And that suite of laws, e-laws, which was approved by Cabinet and then passed in the House in 2021, right, is now paving the way for other digitization efforts, and not only in terms of delivering government services, but also by uptake by the private sector to deliver e-commerce. And right, so you talk about digital signatures, you talk about the different aspects of data privacy, data sharing that are enabling this. And so that's a major accomplishment of the EDC.
Indeed, indeed, and I want to, highlight and, let's take the example, for instance, just to reinforce and for clarity's sake. So, for instance, a Galen Eagle, who has decided to open up their own, let's just say, organic cosmetic business. And what they need to do, and they want to be able to register their company, they also want to utilize social media, because social media, of course, as a marketing tool, from an e-commerce standpoint as well, sets up these platforms that allow people to sell their goods to a wider audience, both locally and internationally, in such a efficient way and a less costly way than ever before. Right? So this sort of environment is perfect for a young Belizean Galen Eagle who has that entrepreneurial spirit. Now, what you're describing from the registry is that as of the 28th, let's just say the 29th, they can go online and they can register their business, put in the name of the business, the owner, etc., and make a payment for the service. Am I hearing you right?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, that's correct.
Then when they're finished with paying for that service, whatever processing time is necessary, they'll then be able to get their certificate of registration. Mm-hmm. Right? And they'll be able to have that available. So if there's, if for instance, the city council comes around asking questions about, trade license arrangements, or for instance, or town council, if things, because we know that there's a possibility of that going in that direction. Additionally, if for instance, they are trying to promote their establishment, there is these legitimate formations that they can do from their desk, so to say. Mm-hmm. Correct?
Yes.
And what those laws that you and everybody else has contributed for as well is now to allow that transactions can take place online, so to say. And let's just say a customer commits to making a payment. The processing of the payment can now be done online via various mediums. There's things like DigiWallet. There's also the eCash, etc., in which these payments can be made. But also you can confirm contractual arrangements via digital signatures with potential, whether it's a supplier or whether it's a potential big client of yours. All of this can happen now via these legal aspects, because I think it's, we understand the importance of regulation, but sometimes we're not tying it down to how it's impactful to our everyday lives from an entrepreneurial end. So I just want to elaborate there. The description of all of this that's now going to be doable, correct?
To put it into context, prior to this digital transformation, the process to register your business name and incorporate your company required 75 manual paper-based steps. That took a very long time to process. It required physical documentation and physical signing, the physical transportation of documents across agencies, and oftentimes paperwork gets lost,
Right.
And so
and very costly as well.
It's very costly, because then you have to come to Belmopan, or you have to pay somebody to do your work in this at the company's registry. So that's where we have come from. And it's amazing that, one of the silver linings of the pandemic and the way that the timing worked is that this digitization project had already started when the pandemic, presented itself. And then when the pandemic required digital work, it meant that the registry was in a position, because they were already undergoing the mental shift, towards working virtually, that they started to provide services via email only, because people couldn't move and people couldn't go into offices. And then the natural next step was then to deliver the services completely online once the system was fully developed and the laws were in place. And what you were mentioning about how all of these things come together is that the laws needed to be updated to say that a digital signature is actually legitimate, right, as opposed to a physical signature or a stamp.
Right.
The
legally binding.
Right, exactly, legally binding. The other laws in terms of public sector data sharing meant that one office's or one agency's system could then communicate in real time with another system to check the boxes, to cross, to make sure that everything was documented. And then the next step would be to just process it. And so the laws have been necessary to really enable some of these things to take off. And that's where we are now.
Right, exactly. Like a digi wallet, an eCash would not be, it was forming, but what it can do and its potential offers from a service end has been increased and may be able to continue to increase based on these legal angles. Thank you for pointing that out. 75 transactions. You can only imagine the time frame involved, right? And I think what it does is, as well as it allows people to become more formal, right? Because the process itself is more transparent and easier to carry out and less costly. So thanks. That's an important component. What I'd like to jump to is a whole other topic, but it connects with that. Some of the actions that I know your desk has been working on of late, and again, it connects back to entrepreneurship as well. Tell us a little bit about the roadshow and where its successes has been from entrepreneurial development angle.
So thank you so much for that question. We're still on the high of the National Micro, Small, and Medium Enterprise Roadshow because of the tremendous success of it. There has been great feedback. There was a lot of a very strong uptake right across the country. The very first time that this was ever done in Belize, and dare I say, in our region. And so Belize is being looked at for this exercise in delivering services to not only to the people, but specifically to entrepreneurs, right? And really encouraging and supporting their formalization. That was the whole objective, or one of the main objectives. And this is another area where the EDC's contribution has been very instrumental, because for years we had been championing, yes, investment attraction is good and needed in terms of foreign direct investment, but we also need to be pushing and promoting and supporting domestic investment. And then when you come down to it, 90% of businesses in our country are micro, small, or medium enterprises. And so this is who we need to be facilitating investment for and from. And so the purpose of the MSME Roadshow was really to get more and more MSMEs formalized by registering your business name, registering for a TIN number, registering for or applying for a trade license where required, also accessing first-hand information from agencies like the Social Security Board, the Labor Department, and from financial institutions. And so we had a very creative and innovative program that ran the course of 3 days at each destination across the country, whereby day one was a bootcamp style training in small business management. Oftentimes, this was the very first training experience that some of these entrepreneurs ever had in their life. And so it gave them a taste of what it means to sit in a workshop, and that it's very valuable in terms of the lessons that you learn, the information that you get, the guidance and the support that you get from agencies like Beltrade. Day two was the formalization clinic, so helping them have access to services right there in one place. No need to come all the way to Belmopan. You had the services right where you were. And a lot of the times it was the very first time that people were interacting with the tax department, or the Belize Tax Service, or the Social Security Board, the Labor Department. And they didn't, before that, they hadn't realized, one, why they should register for these services, two, why they're important, and how easy it is to interact with the officers at these agencies. And it was amazing to see the level of uptake. And of course, day three was the pop-up marketplace, where the entrepreneurs could display what their products and services are. And for the most part, it was tremendously high quality products, creative things, new, innovative, even services that it blows your mind what is being done in Belize. Now we need to connect them with the market.
Right, fantastic. And some of the key, we sit in our as we may remember from university days, or sit in committee meetings or board meetings or whatever it is, and we talk about things like diversity. And for me, entrepreneurship and diversity go hand in hand. And you're right in saying that the majority of our ecosystem here in Belize is made up of that, MSME, right, which is the micro, small, medium, and these are the entities that or businesses that need the most assistance and support. So I'm happy to hear about the successes from the roadshow and the formality angle, but also, if I'm understanding you right, especially on that day 3, the opportunities for partnerships as well, probably between each other, right?
Oh yes,
and otherwise as well.
Absolutely. No, that was one of the highlights of the roadshow, in and of itself, to see these entrepreneurs realizing that somebody within their same town was doing something that was a complement to their product or service, and then getting into business with them. I mean, I can think of the lady in Orange Walk who's making fresh beans, frozen. She prepares beans, she freezes them, and now she's sourcing the flavoring from a meat processor to put in her product, and she is now doing research and development to develop baked beans to sell to the meat processor, because they also sell barbecue. And there was like a lot of that, and there is also other examples of the lady who's doing Belizean sweets, and we were able to connect her with somebody who could show her how to package them in a beautiful presentation that is of the quality that you could sell at the international airport. So it begins to, yeah. Fantastic.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing, Christmas is on the way. I'm looking forward to hearing about some package offers. I'm seeing somebody who's a masseuse or has opened their own spa, potentially offering and using Belizean products, right? Organic Belizean products. Yeah. So there is truly a Belize experience when you go, to a service such as that, or as you said, in the restaurant or food services offer, where it's one Belizean supporting a next Belizean, and oh my gosh, that's exciting to hear, right? So very, very interesting. And any statistics to share in terms of how many entrepreneurs or MSMEs you were able to target? Sometimes numbers really speak volumes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. On the day 1 events, which were the bootcamp training, we had just around 900 entrepreneurs who participated in the bootcamp sessions. So that's significant, because like I said, oftentimes it was the very first time that they've had that kind of experience. On the day 2 events, the formalization clinics, it's somewhere to in the realm of about 600 or 700 entrepreneurs who participated in that. And like I said, we had people lining up to register for their TIN number at the Belize Tax Service, which is unheard of. It's like, when did we imagine that this would happen? But it was as a result of highlighting the different government programs that are available to support the same entrepreneurs to, for example, get duty exemption on packaging materials. But you need a TIN number so that the customs department can process it. Right. And so now people are jumping on these opportunities. They are realizing how important it is to comply with, in this case, taxation. And it's not as if tax is going to be charged right away. As a matter of fact, the cabinet has already approved other policy decisions to waive the requirement to pay tax for up to 4 years for new businesses that become formalized, new micro enterprises that become formalized. So there's a lot happening in the realm of MSME support, and it's a tremendously exciting time to be a Belizean and a Belizean entrepreneur.
Right. And yeah, indeed. And I'm happy to hear that, because, that incubator time period, that time of when, a company is just starting, is one of the most vulnerable they will be, right? And volatile as they learn as well, because what you're describing is a lot of Belizeans, young Belizeans in some cases, having a lot of entrepreneurial spirit, but still learning the entrepreneurial techniques, because there's some formality to it as well. And then I like what you're saying about the formal angles, but I think what's also important is that many people don't understand, for instance, the facilitation process at Beltrade. And what I would really love to see from Beltrade, and I'm plugging this one here for EDC, is an incentive, which I know is in the works, but we're still formulating an incentive that really benefits that MSME, right? As you described in terms of the taxes, but also a lot of what we know is there ways of interconnecting the supply chains here? And when the supply chains cannot be connected here, and I say that because it's important, right? It's important to buy in Belize and build Belize. But at the same time, where it can't be connected, where is there, or how is there ways in which that supply chain can be facilitated? Because it's quite cumbersome, expensive, challenging, when you're trying to source material. Let's just say you have a big project, and this happens. You have a big project, you have a partner that wants, a huge volume of packaged beans, as you said, right? Let's just say that. But then you can't identify the packaging material at a reasonable cost and within a reasonable time frame locally. So you have to go looking abroad, being able to get it here and still offer a competitive price, both locally or whether it's connected with some regional component, for instance, with CARICOM, becomes very complicated. So these facilitation angles, I think, both on the fiscal incentive side, but also on the export angle as well, is key. And maybe you could tell us, about what you envision as an ideal incentive offer or package that can be a collaboration really between public and private, that is as a result of public and private dialogue or public and private collaboration. And I'm sure you learned quite a bit from the roadshow, but also from your experience prior and your conversations, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The services offered by Beltrade through its various agencies, including, for example, the Small Business Development Center and Export Belize, are two that are at the front line of assisting, especially micro and small enterprises, in not only developing or moving up the chain in terms of their quality of offering, but also in getting them export ready. And what we already see is that because of the various programs that Beltrade administers, for example, the MSME Enhancement Program, which offers duty exemption on packaging materials, there is also a private sector element whereby customs brokers are now partners in this process. And I think that's where a great level of facilitation as well as market awareness really comes into play to help these entrepreneurs be able to source, be able to import and export, and have benefits along the way. So there is opportunity for private sector to participate, and they springboard off these programs that the cabinet and the government have approved for MSMEs. Very exciting is the government's decision to do an MSME procurement policy, whereby by 2024, the goal is to have 20% of government's procurement be earmarked to micro, small, and medium enterprises. That's equivalent to about $40 million a year in sales to MSMEs, which I think could really make it, for the businesses that are able to participate in it, in these programs.
Right. That's a success that can lead to, really be a jumping board, if you want to say it, or a springboard. And in other cases, it could lead to stability. It could lead to the establishment of a new facility, many different things. So that's fantastic to hear.
And if I can add, it also adds stability to the financial sector, because as the Development Finance Corporation, as the National Bank, as the commercial banks and the credit unions extend more and more credit to micro businesses, imagine what it does for reducing their risk when you know that the micro enterprise that you're lending money to has a secure contract, especially with government. It really reduces the risk, and it makes the financial system a bit more stable.
Right. Well, perfect, because my next point was access to financing, which is critical for any entrepreneur, any business across the board. And we know what the challenges are, and a lot of it is the collateral, as you just described. Right. Now, that's fantastic when it comes to do with, those businesses that are able to garner or gain that government contract, but there will be many others that won't. So I would like to ask questions a little bit more about, and coming back to that ease of doing business and a critical parameter within the ease of doing business, which is the credit bureau, right? Where are we with that, and what, can be done to facilitate? Because you having your own credit, and there are many entrepreneurs out there that have had successes, have proven to be good financial risks for banks, but there is no, formality to that process. There is no definition of, well, you're stuck at one bank because that's where you have your experience and your exposure. What happens if they want to open different opportunities or move to another location even throughout the country? Can we talk a little bit more about where we are in terms of that credit bureau facilitation and actual, enactment of the legal and regulatory requirements to then start to action it on the ground in terms of making it come to life?
Well, I'd actually like to focus on the secure transactions and collateral registry as a first tool and instrument in the access to finance realm. The secure transactions and collateral registry, what it would really do is enable small businesses to register their movable assets as collateral. And that can really free up space and the opportunity to access credit at the financial institutions. This is something that the government has really supported, and it has given the green light for us to pursue securing technical assistance and funding to establish that registry. So that's one that can definitely be, we can look out for that in the near future to have that in place and in motion in support of small business access to credit.
When do you anticipate that's going to be coming to life? Because I agree that's a first step.
Yes, we're not sure of the time frame for it as yet, except that it is a priority item, and we certainly have it on the EDC's strategic plan to monitor and to continue to support. And so the idea or the plan is to really now pursue securing the funding from our international partners to really now, get that in place and to really establish and operationalize it.
And then additionally, so, we know access to financing is critical. And, that without that, there are limitations in terms of movement and growth. Is there any tools or mediums or awareness campaigns underway, for instance, for a young entrepreneur or even an entrepreneur with an established business listening to this podcast to access some of that information so that they can start, from today, let's just say, to line up what they need to line up? Because right now they're looking for expansion in January or the December season. They want to be able to, increase their volumes in order to offer product within the buying season, one of the buying seasons, let's just say December. Any feedback, any input you can share with our audience on that? I think that would be critical.
So I can foresee that in connection with that project to establish the security transactions and collateral registry, that we would definitely have a component for communication and education and awareness building. So that's definitely a no-brainer that we'll definitely want to include something there, really emphasize that. But in the interim, the central bank's National Financial Inclusion Strategy is a document that is already available and that gives good information and guidance as to some of the tools, the instruments that would be useful. Apart from that, some of the financial institutions like the Development Finance Corporation and the National Bank are really proactive in promoting their respective small business lending. Some of it might be related to green financing or even specifically for women entrepreneurs. And so those can be sources of, firsthand information as to how to now begin to line up and be ready for accessing finance for growth and expansion.
All right. And, if you're speaking to a young entrepreneur and they're saying, guess what? I want to, 2023 is going to be my year. I'm going to be starting a new business. This is my product line. This is what I'm intending. I have some financing already. I'll need more, but I really want to do this right. What is your recommendation on the first step they need to do from a public-private sector partnership angle?
I'd say be sure, if you haven't done it as yet, to sign up to be a client of the Small Business Development Center at Beltrade. You can get very good support there in terms of the training opportunities, but also business mentorship. And I think that's the first step, because the mentors will guide you in terms of the process to clarify your goals, to update your business plan, to really help you have a solid framework for yourself, to work with as you decide to take the plunge. And on the idea of taking risk, we have a brand new Companies Act that the EDC has also provided support to the Ministry of Finance through the Financial Services Commission in producing and delivering for the business community that really does integrate and include aspects related to insolvency and bankruptcy. So the idea is to really facilitate entry in terms of becoming a business, but also exit, if it is that your business venture is not being as successful as you expected it to be. And so the idea is to really enable, confidence and courage in the entrepreneur to take the plunge.
So thank you very much, Ishmael. Before we close off this podcast today, is there any, future plans, future exciting incentives that the EDC would like to take this opportunity to highlight at this moment?
There's so much that we could continue to talk about. What I'd like to emphasize is the concept of innovation. Innovation means doing things differently. Life is about change, and we certainly want public services to change and improve in terms of the quality and the speed at which they deliver to the private sector, to entrepreneurs. And so it's all about, being open-minded to change and innovation, and embracing technology, embracing new approaches, and to pushing the reform agenda.
Right. Fantastic. And thank you for that. Well, this closes off our Galen Eagle podcast. And thank you for listening to us. And we wish you a good day.